You become a performer on their stage, playing a role you never auditioned for, trying to please a crowd that never wanted your authentic story. They sit in circles, laughing with mouths full of nothing, and then they turn to you, the one who sees, the one who questions, and say, "Explain yourself. Explain why you don't fit. Explain why you're angry. Explain why your voice cuts through their noise like a scream in a library." They demand answers. But they never came looking for truth. No. They came to watch you bleed it out. You ever try talking sense into a clown? That's what it feels like when you try explaining yourself to people who've already made up their minds. They don't want understanding. They want control. The Joker? He learned this lesson the hard way. He once stood in front of a judge, a therapist, a mother, a friend, explaining himself. His thoughts, his rage, his smile. And you know what they said? That's not normal. That's disturbing. You're overthinking. You need help. He handed them a mirror. They smashed it and blamed him for the broken glass. So he laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was futile. You try to teach fire to those who only feel safe in the cold. You try to reveal the system to those married to their chains, and worst of all, you try to make sense to those who benefit from your confusion. That's the circus, darling. You're the act, they're the audience. And no matter how many facts, feelings, or philosophies you throw into the ring, they clap when you fall. So why speak? Why offer truth to minds built to reject it? This world doesn't reward wisdom. It rewards volume. Louder lies win over quieter truths. And the more you try to clarify, the more they distort. That's the game. And it's rigged. So Joker stopped playing. He stopped talking. He started watching and waiting, because silence is louder than any explanation. Let them wonder. Let them assume. Let them call you names they barely understand. You don't owe them clarity. You owe yourself peace. The world has never been kind to those who speak truth. Not the easy kind that soothes the masses, but the raw, jagged kind that cuts through their comfortable lies. Socrates was poisoned for questioning the gods and the morals of Athens. Galileo was silenced, forced to recant the very truths he uncovered about the universe. Jesus, well, they nailed him to a cross for upsetting the status quo. They never crucified the liars. They crucified the clear voices. Why? Because truth makes people uncomfortable. Truth forces reflection. And most of all, truth threatens the delicate balance of power. When you speak what others don't want to hear, you become the enemy. The madman, the troublemaker, the one who must explain, justify, and beg for forgiveness just to stay alive. Society demands explanations, not to understand you, but to control you, to wear you down until your fire becomes a flicker, and then nothing. Every era has tried to tame the rebel, the intellectual, the outcast. Schools teach you to parrot what's acceptable, not what's true. Governments censor inconvenient facts. Religions preach obedience, not inquiry. of them use a simple tool, the endless demand to explain. Because when you are forced to justify yourself, your power slips through your fingers like sand. Joker looks in the cracked mirror of history and sees a pattern, a broken reflection of who you're allowed to be. They want you normal, stable, silent. But the truth is ugly, chaotic, unpredictable. And the world fears that. So it punishes those who reveal it. You've been taught to apologize for rocking the boat, to say sorry for disrupting their fragile peace, to keep quiet, or else. But what if silence is louder than your words? What if not explaining is your rebellion? Because the moment you stop justifying yourself, you stop being their puppet. And that's when the real chaos begins. There was a time the Joker tried to explain himself, to plead his case like a man trapped in a cage made of words. He thought if he just talked long enough, they'd see. They'd understand. They'd stop hunting him like a monster. But Gotham wasn't listening. Not really. His explanations bounced off walls thick with ignorance. Every word twisted, weaponized against him. The louder he spoke, the smaller he became, like a candle struggling against a hurricane. One night, cornered in the shadows of the city, something inside snapped. Not with rage, but clarity. He smiled. Not a polite smile. No, this was the smile of a man who had nothing left to lose. A smile that said, I don't care what you think anymore. Because why waste breath on idiots who never wanted truth? Why play their game when the deck is stacked? The Joker embraced madness, not because he was crazy, but because madness was freedom. Freedom from the endless explanations. Freedom from the chains of needing approval. Freedom from the poison of trying to reason with the unreasonable. He became unpredictable, uncontainable. A force of chaos they couldn't tame with logic or lies, and in that chaos, he found power. True power. When you stop explaining, you stop giving them the upper hand. You stop feeding their need to control you. You reclaim your voice, not to explain, but to ignite. So, when they ask you to explain, remember, sometimes the loudest answer is silence. Sometimes the strongest move is walking away, because you are not here to justify your existence. You're here to live it, unapologetically, fiercely, without permission. Why do we get trapped in the endless loop of explaining ourselves? Because inside we carry chains forged by doubt and fear, the chains of why me, why am I misunderstood, why am I judged, why won't they listen? The Joker knows this well. He's been haunted by these questions, circling them like vultures, waiting to feed on his doubts. But here's the cruel irony. The more you ask, why me? So the deeper you sink into the trap they set. It's a prison built on guilt and self-doubt, disguised as self-reflection. You think you're searching for answers, but really, you're feeding the monster of approval. Psychologists call it the need to belong. We crave acceptance so deeply that we sacrifice our truth, bending ourselves into shapes others want. We explain, we apologize, we justify, hoping to patch the cracks in our broken mirror. But the mirror was never meant to be whole. It was shattered long ago by the very society that demands your silence. You become a performer on their stage, playing a role you never auditioned for, trying to please a crowd that never wanted your authentic story. The Joker rejects this act. He stares at the broken glass and laughs, because he knows one truth. You don't owe anyone an explanation for who you are. Freedom comes when you stop asking, "Why me?" and start saying, "I am me." The chains break not when you convince others, but when you accept yourself, flaws, chaos, and all. So next time they demand your reasons, your stories, your justifications, remember the cage you're inside and choose to step outside it. Because explaining to idiots, it's like watering a dead plant, a waste of your precious life. Silence. It's the most misunderstood weapon in the world. Not because it's weak, but because it's powerful beyond measure. The Joker knows this well. He learned that silence isn't giving up. It's a choice, a defiant roar in a world that demands noise. When you stop explaining to idiots, you reclaim your power. You deny them the fuel they need to twist your words, control your mind, manipulate your reality. Every time you try to justify yourself to those who refuse to understand, you're handing over the keys to your cage. But silence? Silence locks that cage tight and throws away the key. In the quiet, there's clarity. In the absence of pointless explanations, there's strength. In choosing not to engage, you become unpredictable, unbreakable. The world wants you to be a puppet, to explain, to apologize, to shrink yourself into a shadow. But you are the fire that refuses to be extinguished. So hold your silence like a blade. Let your actions speak louder than your words ever could. Let your peace be louder than their noise. Remember, you don't owe anyone an explanation, especially not the ones who never cared to understand. And now, I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, when did you finally stop explaining to those who never listened? What changed when you embraced your silence? Share your story. Because sometimes the loudest rebellion starts with saying nothing at all.